Hey guys, it's Bex here, and I'm here with Danny J from the Sweaty Betties.
Hey!
We are talking about a hot topic. Well, it's hot for us because we've been gossiping about it on the phone for the past few days because I wanted to get her perspective on figure competitions, of which I have no experience. This is just my regular everyday figure. It could be competition.
Yeah. I think you should go throw on a sparkly bikini and heels and let's do this. Thumbs up if you want Bex on the stage.
You can be biased because you did it, and I've never done it. But what I've noticed and why I reached out to you was on my Instagram. It seems like a lot of my blogger friends and my fitness friends, influencers, all of a sudden are training for competition. Like people I thought would never, ever, ever do something like this. I don't even know much about it, so I shouldn't say something like this. But I'm really shocked. So I went to you because I know that you've had a certain experience, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit. And have you noticed that a lot of people are getting into it?
Yeah, and I will preface this saying that I'm going to have a skewed vision and explanation of this whole thing because of my experience. And it's not to say that I don't completely agree with it, but I'll explain why I feel the way I do. But it has been blowing up, and I kind of cringe about it because there are a lot of repercussions to it, and there's a lot of things that people don't know going into it. And I think it's an awesome goal to have and set for yourself if you know what you're going into. But I like people to know the whole picture before they make a decision. So, yeah.
So what I'm curious about first and foremost, because something that I do know about is nutrition. And I've been following these women. A lot of them are friends of mine. And I've been looking at their diet diaries and the supplements that they're taking, and a lot of the protein bars and things that they're eating. And I wouldn't call a lot of those things proper nutrition. So I'm wondering if this is something that you have to do specifically to train how you feel, like what kind of effects that it has on the body. Some of the stuff is just is garbage, like it's junk food almost. And I don't know if that's what they're getting from their coaches or if that's just something that they're looking at and saying like, oh, this is protein, this is good for me, and I'm taking it. So what's your take on the nutrition?
Well, so the whole figure competition came out of the bodybuilding scene. So bodybuilders back in the 80s, they all found their certain ways to make their bodies look really shredded and really lean. And unfortunately, a lot of the methods that they used, they started to translate over into figure and bikini competitions. So a lot of these things are really, really extreme, and they're not necessarily founded in science, but they worked for one person, so they passed it on to someone else, and they just assumed that they would work for everyone. And often they do work for people, but they don't work for the long term, and they don't realize that there are repercussions on the other end. So a lot of the nutrition comes from just one diet being passed down and passed down and passed down, and nobody really looks at the effects, like the protein powders. And I remember when I was in competition, Splenda was a big thing, and we would put it on everything. Like you weren't allowed to have, yeah, you weren't allowed to have sugars. So it was like we would just dump Splenda on everything. I mean, I remember even myself, I would take Splenda and like put it on fish and put it on broccoli because everything was so plain, and you're like, oh, Splenda's a free food. It has no calories, so you put it on. And we know now that Splenda is not good for you. It destroys your gut. It's terrible for you. Any artificial sweeteners are terrible for you. But this is the kind of mentality of this world, and I really feel like it is a small, it is its own little mini culture. And so a lot of this bodybuilding culture has leaked into the figure bikini. And so there's just all these ideas going on, and I really feel like it's this long game of telephone. Like it started with one person, and they just passed the same crap on without even really looking into the science behind anything. And so it's just this, yeah.
But on the other
the nutrition part sucks.
Do you feel that there's a way to compete and it be good for you? And I'm talking about just in terms of the science of nutrition and your body and long-term effects. Like, do you think that competition can be healthy? Not mentally, physically.
Okay, physically. I do believe that you can get on stage and not damage yourself, and you can go through a healthy prep. What they call usually 12 to 14 weeks before a show is called prep. I have worked with some coaches, and I continue to work with one now who trains his clients in a much healthier way, and I do believe it is healthy. However, there still is the mental aspect, and that's another thing we can talk about. But for the most part, I would say 95, I would almost say 99% of coaches don't do it a healthy way.
But what are the biggest dangers in terms of what they're recommending for nutrition? Like, what do you see as the biggest problem?
So I think the biggest problems are a combination of too much cardio and exercise and not enough caloric intake. A lot of these competitors are doing 1 to 3 hours of exercise a day, meaning like an hour of weights and then 2 hours of cardio, and then they're eating anywhere between 8 to 1,200 calories a day, which is not enough to sustain that kind of energy output. And so it's causing a lot of hormonal damage. It's increasing cortisol levels. It's destroying just sex hormones, their adrenals, their thyroid, all of these complications, you know, when they're out of it. And often it doesn't show up after the first show. Sometimes it's the second, the third, the fourth. I did it for 3 years before I had any complications, and I thought I was fine. But I strongly believe that if you continue on this kind of path, that it's not about if it's going to happen to you, it's just a matter of when it's going to happen to you, unless you are really taking good breaks in between and you're watching your calories and making sure you're getting enough, you know, in relation to your activity level.
So what kind of effects did you suffer from?
Well, immediately it was just the weight gain. In my head, I missed a lot of the signs. I was fatigued. I was just tired, and I was at this point where when you're a competitor, you just think, this is what you have to do. You got to suck it up. Like, you go to the gym even if you're tired, and you work out even when you're not feeling good, because this is
I don't do that.
This is what champions do. Like, this is my mentality. So I ignored the fact that I was really exhausted. I ignored the fact that I wasn't having any sex with my husband because I was tired and I had no sex drive. I ignored a lot of these signs and symptoms because I thought this is just what you have to do to be the best. And when I stopped and I did my last show, I realized that I hadn't had carbs for a long time, and I was just going to reincorporate some small healthy things. I do see a lot of girls after shows go on these crazy binges. I mean, they bring bags and bags of candy, and they go all nuts the day of the show with Reese's and cakes. And I didn't do that, but the very next day after my last show, I ate a half cup of oats, 4 ounces of sweet potato, and mind you, I measured this all. Like, everything was very precise, measured. I have a food scale. So half a cup of oats, 4 ounces of sweet potato were the only thing I added differently, and I gained 8 pounds that day. And I was freaking out because I'm going, oh my gosh, that wasn't anything insane. That wasn't a binge. And so I went on this, okay, crap, I need to take the carbs back out, and I need to do more cardio to lose that 8 pounds. And so after that, it went in this up and down of my weight, trying to decide if I should eat carbs, if I shouldn't. Then my mind was going insane because I thought that it was healthy, but why am I gaining the weight? So I got very depressed. I went to my OBGYN. I asked him to put me on Prozac. I was anxious around food because I didn't know what to eat anymore. If there wasn't a food scale and I couldn't weigh it, I didn't know how much I should eat. Like, I couldn't eyeball portions. And so it was this high anxiety, depression. I didn't want to leave the house because I felt very puffy and I gained all this weight. It was just, it's a huge mental battle. And I find this even with the competitors who have a healthy diet. The one part about it is they don't know what to eat because they're so used to being told this is what you eat when, because it does have to still be very precise. And so they get to this place where they're not sure and they don't trust themselves anymore on what they're allowed to have or not have. And that's a really big issue that I have a problem with.
So I posted on my Facebook that I was going to be talking to you, and of course I get the people who are for it and then totally against it, and for very different reasons. Like, some people just say that it's, you know, it's objectifying women, so you're coming from that part, or saying that it's unhealthy, for, you know, physically. And then other people who are for it are saying that it's a great testament to athleticism and dedication and all of those things. So I'm just wondering what you would say to women who are in it now or thinking about doing it now, or saying, but look, I have all this discipline now, and I'm doing something I'm healthier than I've ever been.
Sure.
Do you think that you can get out of it on the other side with a good mindset or a good attitude towards food?
I think so. I mean, I do have a client right now who's competing, and I have long talks with my clients who get this idea that they want to do it. So beforehand, I have to tell them the the political side, because there is another side that is, you know, you're getting up on stage, you worked your butt off, you want to show off your body that you're proud of because maybe you've never had that confidence before. And maybe for you it's just a goal of like, I've never felt good in a bikini, that's what I want. And that's okay. If you're getting on with the mindset that I want to win and I want to turn pro and this is the way I want to, you know, I want to be in this industry as a competitor, I can't work with those people because I think that's the mindset that gets you in trouble on the other side. So I think that if you know what you're getting into and you're doing it as just a personal, like, bucket list goal, then go for it. I don't like to have people compete more than twice. And, like, do it, check it off your bucket list, say you did it, get that experience of getting on stage, and then maybe one more time if you want to just kind of fix or do something new because, you know, the first time you maybe messed up. Maybe you messed up, like, you know, you got nervous or something and you ran off stage and you didn't do it how you wanted to feel. But after that, I just think there's more things to do in your life, and it's very expensive, and it takes away from real life. I mean, you don't get to enjoy birthday parties with your kids, or you don't get to enjoy anniversaries with your husband. There's so many things that you don't get to do, and sure, you're disciplined, but is it really worth what you're missing out on in life for that one moment that you're on stage, you know?
You're saying that the best body doesn't win when you're talking about the political stuff.
Yeah.
Isn't that like a big mind F? If you're training for perfection and then you get up there and then you're being judged on your body, and you said this, you said, you know, you were doing all this training and dieting and you had all this dedication, and then at the end of the day you were being judged on how you looked in a bikini.
Yeah.
But then maybe you're not being judged fairly. What's up with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for one, you know, I pride myself on how strong I was, but you get up there and they don't ask you how many push-ups you can do. They don't ask how far you can run, or they don't even ask how many hours of cardio did you do. So somebody might have done 20 minutes and somebody might have done 2 hours. The person who did 2 hours doesn't get any extra bonus points. And I remember my very last show, I won't go into real details about the political part of it, but I was told ahead of time that basically I was in trouble for doing something. And I spent, gosh, probably $2,000 getting to that show. I flew to Florida. I had the plane tickets. I had the hotel, the entry fees, all of that. And before I went on stage, I basically said I was in trouble. And I walked out there and I didn't get called out. Basically, I was in like the last place group. And I had been placing top 10 nationally before that at every single show. So I knew it was a lesson for me. They were mad at me and they wanted to realize what I had done. But I thought, why did I train so hard? Why did I spend all this money to get here? Why did I do everything I could to come looking the best that I could look? And it had nothing to do with how I looked at that moment. And I was so upset about that part. And I had seen it happen before to other girls, but it never happened to me, so I kind of just brushed it off. And I still thought, well, you know, there's still a chance. I know there's political stuff, and there are people who still place well, and it has nothing to do with politics. But there is an underlying politics in a lot of it, and that part really sucks. And I see girls going home, and they look at the pictures of everyone else, and they just start comparing, and they go, okay, this is what I need to fix. This is what I need to do better next time. When they had no idea that all along the judges were best friends with the girl who won, or they were the nanny of the person who won. And so it had nothing to do with how they looked. They just didn't know that there was a different relationship there that they didn't have.
Well, I've heard in conversations, and this is where I cringe, okay? And I think that in everything that we do, we're always constantly having to check ourselves, to check our motivations, and like why, even with success or business or friendships or relationships or whatever. But I've heard women who I had a lot of respect for and are so level-headed in so many different areas of their lives, and then they'll compete, and then they'll come out and they'll go, well, I was much hotter than her, and I should have totally won. Or look at all, like she had cellulite, or she had this, or she had that. And that's where it falls into this territory of getting really dangerous emotionally. And yeah. I wonder that if you can really avoid it, even being a strong-minded, educated, smart, you know, strong-willed woman, if you can avoid falling into that trap when that's the whole nature of what you're being judged upon. Like, why not be just really satisfied with the journey of, you know, just getting fit or, you know, whatever. Like, I went to the gym today. I'm still sweaty. And I ran. And just that, and just doing that, I don't have to get up on stage at the end of it for someone else to tell me that I did a good job. So I know this is really judgy. It probably was.
That's a really good point. I would have to say I have never seen anybody that emotionally mature to get off stage and not make any judgment against someone else, which is really sad. Even the last client that I had who competed, and it was just, I mean, she had twins, and she just wanted to, you know, show that she could do this. After the show, I remember her writing to me and saying that people told her after, oh, you were robbed, you were the best one, you looked better than this person. And I wasn't there, and I said, that might very well be, but it is what it is. But you're so right. You still get this comparison, and you still get this, like, I should have been. It should have been me.
Well, because it's so subjective. Because if I go in a push-up contest, and even that, you know, I mean, honestly, like, I get a lot of compliments on my arms. They're like, oh, your arms look great, arms look great. I never, ever, ever, ever work my upper body. I am so weak in the upper body. It's genetically, and this is like a big secret that I'm revealing. Genetically, my arms just look good. And my lower body is like mush, so I have to work really hard. But so I could, you know, get into a push-up contest with someone, and we're going head-to-head. I do 50, and the girl does 55. She wins.
Right.
And that's easy. And I don't go away stomping my feet because she did 55. But if I go in a bikini and we're judging butts, and I've been working super, super hard on mine, I think mine's looking so much better. But it's still not. Who's texting me? Are you texting me, Danny?
No.
It's still not looking good. Then, to the person who's judging me, then I'm going to feel bad. I'm going to feel, you know, bad.
You do feel bad, and you start to question, like, you start really obsessing over the pictures and what can I do better this time, and you just start looking at other people. That's all you have to compare, because when you're on stage, all they do is compare you to everybody else. So it's not comparing you to who you used to be. They're not looking at before and after pictures. They're comparing you to everyone else, and they're also comparing you to everyone else, and then who knows what the relationship is with everyone else. So there's the things that you don't see, and then there's the comparison. And yeah, it's very hard, because maybe one judge just happens to like dark-haired girls and doesn't like blondes, and they might not even psychologically or know that they have preference to dark hair. They just always do, because maybe some blonde pissed them off years ago, and they just automatically are drawn to this other person. And so it's just, you know, there's really, it's so, so hard. And that part, I just don't like that part. I think that's a really good bit of advice. Like you said, you know, compete for it to be a bucket list item and not to win. And then another part of it is when you're going into this, and this is good for all different parts of your life, compare yourself against the self that you were before. You know, use yourself as the measuring stick and your individual journey. Because if you're comparing yourself against other people in any aspect of life, there's always going to be somebody better. You will absolutely never, ever be the best. Even if you're judged on that day as being the best, in 3 seconds, it could be completely different. So. Oh, that's so true. I mean, I've seen girls go from, they compete one weekend, the very next weekend, they compete again. They go from last place to first place, or first place to last place in a week, just because there's different judges, and their body looks virtually the same in a week. I mean, you're not going to change that much, and a lot of the girls they compete against are the same. So, yeah, I mean, the comparing has to stop, too, and it's just negative and destructive. I will be the first to say that I was so judgmental. One of the reasons I think why I was so scared to be in public after this happened and I started gaining weight, because I knew how judgmental I was. If I saw those girls gaining weight after, I'm like, oh, what is she doing? And I knew people would do that to me. And so that kind of industry, they get really judgmental, and it's, you think you're just looking at physiques. And I used to think, oh, I'm just critiquing their physique, and I can see the human body for what it is, and I'm looking at the anatomy. But then it goes to another place, and you just start critiquing people as a person, and all you're looking at is their body, but yet you don't know what's inside or what's going on, and you start to get into a really weird place that just, it's not coming from love. It's not coming from any good spot.
It's like yoga class. When people say, oh, don't worry, no one's looking at you. No one's looking at how well you're posing in yoga class. Like, everybody is looking at you. Everyone is looking at everyone else in yoga class. And that's something you have to get over. You go to the gym, people are looking at each other. I mean, that's they do, and you kind of have to get over that. But I think, you know what, if someone's watching this and they're thinking about doing it, they should just call us, and we'll see if they're if their attitude is.
I mean, I say this. I do have clients that still compete, and I just have a long chat with them about why they want to, what are their motives, what are their goals. And I just get really, really real with them. And I say, okay, first off, if you want to compete, find a really good coach. And I have very few that I recommend. I can do it myself, but I honestly don't like to. So I'm not even like trying to promote because I don't really love doing it. Find a good coach, and then to know what your goals and what is your overall kind of mission for this. Is it just to get on stage and to feel accomplished? Or if you want to go far and go along with it, I need to sit down and talk to you about, like, okay, what do you think that means? Because I think a lot of women think that that's going to get them a magazine cover. They think it's going to get them sponsorships. And that's not the case either. I've gotten on a magazine cover and I've been sponsored. And that comes from relationships, not from how I placed. Because I never won a national show and I never turned pro. And I had pros asking me how I got the jobs that I got. But it was because of the relationships I developed with the promoters and with the people who ran the supplement companies and with that kind of thing. So you just really need to know what your goals are, and there might be another way to reach those goals, and it doesn't necessarily mean competing is the way.
So give me a couple red flags, like in terms of, so if someone's in it and they're training now or they're looking for a coach, red flag in terms of nutrition, in terms of the exercise, or also in terms of their attitude that might tell them that, you know, you're going down the wrong path with this.
Ooh, that's good. Okay, 3 red flags. Number 1, I would actually try to find your coach's other clients who are doing this and compare your diets. And if they are exactly the same, that's a red flag. Oftentimes these coaches just like print something out and they give it to everybody. Number 2 red flag is if you're doing 2-a-days, meaning like cardio in the morning for 45 minutes and cardio at night for 45 minutes, and you are less than a week out, that you may need to do 2-a-days for like a week. That's it. If you have like 12 weeks to go and you're already doing that, huge, huge, huge red flag.
Yeah.
The third one, I would say, this is iffy, but it's going to be like extreme cravings. And I know at some point you're going to have cravings because you're eating the same thing. But if you feel like you're going to go on a binge, almost in this uncontrollable, or if you find yourself actually eating in a parking lot in your car and you're ashamed and embarrassed and that kind of thing is happening, that's a big red flag because you are physiologically making this happen. It's nothing wrong with you or your willpower. It's that your body can no longer sustain what you're doing to it, and so you go out and you have these binges. And I think it's sad because a lot of women never had eating disorders before competing, and then they end up with binge eating disorder or anorexia or bulimia because they just feel so out of control now. So if you feel like you're getting out of control with your thoughts, like you're obsessing over food, or you're having binges or secret binges, that's another red flag, and I would try to get help, and not necessarily your coach, but maybe a good nutritionist or naturopath. So
that's awesome. All right, good stuff, good stuff. You didn't say about the bad attitude, but I think that we can all figure that out if we're starting to get, I mean, that's the hardest one, I think, to judge. So maybe check in with your friends or someone you really care about and have someone who knows you. And if they see, like, big changes in your mood or your attitude, just like a partner, like you said, your sex drive is down, that would be a good indicator that things are not going well for you.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Danny.
I can make, like, a top 10 list, actually. There's a lot of things, but, you know, those are the top 3, and there's definitely more. Just be aware of it. As long as you're aware of these kind of things happening, then you can put a stop to it before it gets worse and before you get really sick. And I was very, very, very ill. So I just want to save people from that. And I'm not saying don't compete. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. But if you're aware of everything and then you still make the decision, then you're at least on a much better foot than you were if you didn't know.
Right. Or you can just do yoga, because that's always good for you.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like whatever, shut up. Thank you so much. It's always awesome talking to you. We're going to hang up, and then I'm going to text you, and then call you again. Sounds like we do.
Exercise is going to be sumo squats. We're going to perform each exercise for 45 seconds on and take about 15 seconds rest in between. That's going to be the time that I'm explaining these to you. I have my ultimate sandbag on my back for a little extra resistance. You can use weights, you can use nothing at all. Just remember to challenge yourself. So let's get started for 45 seconds of sumo squats. For these, we're going to keep our chest nice and high and our legs out with our toes pointing out at, say, 11 and 1 o'clock. Bring our butts back nice and deep, and then straight up. Remember to keep your shoulders back, chest open to the front, and your butt all the way back like you're sitting in a chair. We're gonna go as deep as we can, and then come straight up again. Really pressing through the heels. And remember to keep those knees in the direction of your